Hi bakers, I'm Sally, and today I'm teaching you how to make a nostalgic favorite, homemade cherry pie. This pie is perfectly sliceable with an almond-hinted thick cherry pie filling and a buttery, flaky pie crust. Quartering some of the cherries and reducing some juices on the stovetop are the tricks I use to ensure that the pie filling will set up perfectly. No one wants a soupy pie. Grab your rolling pin and let's get started. Let's start by making the cherry pie filling. You need 1.5 pounds of fresh cherries for this recipe. I have a big bowl here and I halved half of the cherries and I quartered the other half of the cherries. I want to show you how I pit the cherries first though. I use this very handy and convenient cherry pitter. Now if you don't have a cherry pitter, that's fine. It's just gonna take you a lot longer, so I strongly recommend getting one if you can. You can get the individual cherry pitters where they just pit one cherry at a time, but I really like this device because it pits 6 cherries at a time. So I'm just placing the cherries inside, just like magic. Press down, and I have all of my pitted cherries here. I'm gonna do that one more time. I'm using dark sweet cherries here, but you could use Rainier cherries instead or a combination. If using sour cherries, you'll need a bit more sugar in the filling, and I have those notes in the written recipe. Now for these cherries, I'm going to halve half of them and quarter the rest. And the reason for this is because I find that using different sized cherries in the filling helps create a nice balance of texture from those halved cherries, and then the quartered cherries kind of bake down and give you that jammy filling. So I prefer doing it both ways. Some are halved, some are quartered. And now I will quarter about half of these so we have a compact pie filling that won't be soupy. That looks good. Add this to my bowl. For the rest of the filling ingredients, we'll add some sugar, cornstarch. Make sure it all gets out of this bowl. Cornstarch can stick. That's gonna help thicken the filling. Lemon juice, some vanilla extract for flavor, and a little bit of almond extract, which is always so delicious with stone fruits like these cherries. And mix it all together. Use a nice big bowl. And you can mix together this filling up to 24 hours in advance and just cover and refrigerate it until you're ready to use it. I'm going to cover this filling and refrigerate it while I roll out the pie crust. This is a double crust pie, and I'm only going to work with the bottom crust first and keep the top crust in the fridge because you want to keep the pie dough as cold as possible. Have some flour nearby. And rolling pin. I'm going to lightly flour my work surface. And I made this pie dough last night, so it's been sitting in the refrigerator overnight. At least 2 hours for pie dough is ideal. Okay, floured my rolling pin, and I'm just going to start rolling out this pie dough. This is my buttery, flaky pie crust, and I have that recipe on my website. The recipe makes 2 crusts, which is perfect for this double crust pie. Adding more flour to make sure the rolling pin doesn't stick either. Turning it, and if I notice the edges are cracking on my pie dough, I'll use my hands and fingers to sort of meld those cracks back together. Perfectly normal with homemade pie dough. This will be the wonderfully flaky bottom underneath our juicy cherry pie filling. I'm rolling out the bottom pie crust to about 12 inches in diameter, making sure I have plenty of room for the edges in a 9-inch pie dish. This looks good. Got my pie dish here. And a handy tip, use your rolling pin to help transfer your rolled out pie dough. Just rolled it backwards. And fit it right in. Press it into the pie dish. Make sure there's no air gaps between the crust and the dish. All right, grab the cold cherry pie filling. Use a slotted spoon to transfer the cherries into the crust, reserving the juices at the bottom of the bowl because we will reduce those down on the stove. Okay, slotted spoon is key here because we want to make sure we reduce as much of this juice down as possible on the stove which helps us get that thickened cherry pie filling. Cherries are so juicy, and they are notorious for creating a pie filling that doesn't set up properly. So that's why I use these couple tricks. Really strain out that juice if you can. And you'll have more juice if you make the filling more in advance. You could even use frozen cherries in this pie filling, and you'll proceed with the recipe just as we did, still reserving those juices to reduce on the stove. All right, last spoonful here. Making sure it's even on top. Place the filled pie in the refrigerator for now. My #1 tip for any pie that you're making is to keep everything as cold as possible. Pour this leftover juice into a small saucepan. This is a small step in the recipe, but it does make the biggest difference. There's not much. Cook the juice over low heat. You want the juice to reduce slightly and thicken. Just about 3 to 4 minutes is all it takes. Let this cool for 5 minutes before pouring over the cherries in the pie. And I'm pouring this right over the cherries. Get every last bit you can. It's a little thick and syrupy. It's perfect. And I'm just going to gently toss it all together. Don't overthink this, it doesn't have to be perfect. Final addition to the filling before adding the top crust, dot a few pieces of extra cold butter right on top of the cherries, and this just creates an extra rich tasting filling. I'm going to put this back in the refrigerator while I roll out the top crust. Top pie dough, we'll roll it out the same way we rolled out the bottom pie dough. Flour your work surface, flour the dough a bit, grab your rolling pin and let's flour that too. You'll roll out this dough into a circle that's about 12 inches in diameter, and that usually works out to be 1/8 of an inch thick. For the top crust, you can make it just a full sheet of crust right on top of the filling, or you can do a lattice topping, which is what I'll do today. It's just that timeless look on top of a cherry pie. We don't have to be as fussy if it's a perfect circle or not, because we're just cutting it into strips anyway. There we go, that looks good. For the latticing, I always like to play around with different widths and designs. So this one I'm going to do thick and thin strips. It always looks very pretty. I am cutting 4 strips that are 2 inches wide and 4 strips that are just 1 inch wide. And you can use a ruler or measuring tape. I'm just eyeballing it. There we go. And I always like to hold on to extra pie dough. You can freeze it. I have my pie here and I am going to start creating the beautiful lattice design. We'll start with 2 thick strips and then 2 thinner strips. And we will fold 2 of them back over and add the other 2 wider strips. I'm just weaving the strips over and under one another and folding them back over. Got our 2 final thin strips here. There's 1 and last one. So you can still see the beautiful cherry pie filling inside, and it just has this lovely weaved pattern on top. Grab some kitchen shears, and I'm not trimming all of the excess dough because I want some dough on the edges to work with to create a fluted edge. So I'm just cutting off those really long pieces. Okay. And now I'm going to fold those edges over back towards the center of the pie to kind of help meld the strips and the bottom pie dough together. Just using my fingers to roll it back. We can flute these edges or you can crimp them with a fork. I'm going to flute them and I'll show you how. Okay, so it doesn't look perfect just yet, but we'll get there. So I'm just kind of making sure everything's even around the edge. Now to flute the edges of the pie dough, we're going to take our knuckle and your thumb and finger from your opposite hand and just pinch them together, creating this lovely scalloped look on the edges of your pie. Now the finishing touches are just as important here. You've come all this way to make a pie from scratch. You should definitely take the few extra steps to make it into something that looks as good as it tastes. Let's brush this pie dough with an egg wash, which is just an egg with a little bit of milk. And this will help give the crust a shiny, golden brown surface. Otherwise, it can look a little dull. And I'm just using a fork to whisk those two together. Grab a pastry brush and we'll brush this dough all over with our egg wash. An egg wash is always a beautiful addition to pies and pastries, so your home-baked pies look just as beautiful as they would if they were in a professional bakery display case. Okay, and now let's brush the lattice. The next addition is optional. For a little sparkly crunch, I like to add a little bit of coarse sugar on top. And again, this is optional, but it just makes it look extra pretty. I'm going to preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. As the oven preheats, place this back in the refrigerator. I recommend placing the pie on a baking sheet to bake in case any juices bubble over. Start this pie for 20 minutes in the 400 degree oven. This high temperature gets that cornstarch working on thickening, and then we'll reduce the temperature to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. When you lower the oven temperature, it's also a good time to add a pie crust shield on top of those edges if they're getting too brown. And I just use a piece of aluminum foil with the center cut out. Let the pie cool for at least 3 to 4 hours before slicing into it. The filling needs to continue setting up as it cools, otherwise it will be too juicy and you'll have cherry soup. Thank you for watching, and I hope you feel more confident to give homemade cherry pie a go in your own kitchen. My final success tip, don't forget the vanilla ice cream. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you feel inspired to try a new baking recipe today. Head over to my website for the full written recipe and all of my success tips. You can also ask a question right there on the recipe page, and my team and I will be happy to answer.